everyone, I'm Alex Renneman, and I'm here with Joe Carson. Now, Joe is the CEO of Spin Strategies, a consulting firm we're going to talk a little bit about here in a bit. But Joe also has been in the C-suite of companies like Micron and Lucent and many of the companies you know, and has spent many years really understanding and studying AI and its impact on businesses, as well as many other components of business strategy and how it plays in with technology and supply chain. And so, Joe, I appreciate you coming on today, and let's dig into this AI thing out there.
You bet, Alex. Thanks for inviting me and glad to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So right off the bat, AI is one of those things that we all are now talking about as if it's one thing or if it's a simple thing or whatever. And AI has been around for a long time, conceptually and in practice. But really, a couple years ago, towards the end of the year, ChatGPT was released to the world, and all of a sudden, AI is everything, everywhere, and all about us. But what I'd love to just scratch the surface of a little bit right now, and we'll get into more depth later. But how do you see AI today is kind of currently transforming supply chain management, and what are some of the things that you're seeing? Okay, this is value. Apart from all the smoke and mirrors and excitement and headlines, and everybody's got .ai in their name, what are some of those real benefits folks are experiencing today?
Yeah, I think I think the as you mentioned, when ChatGPT came, everybody knew about it, and everybody thought, well, that was AI, and of course, that's an element of AI. But really, what's happening, especially in the area of operations, is you see these new tools that are just kind of coming to fore that allow us to process things so much faster and make intelligent decisions faster. When I think about AI, and what is it all about, and what are we talking about when we're talking about it in an operations setting, I'm thinking about the ability to ingest massive amount of data, first of all, and to be able to kind of assimilate that and make sense of it all instantaneously. We can't do that as humans. You can't read every book. You can't know every bit of knowledge. You can't know what everything's happening around the world, but AI systems are able to do that. The second part is the ability to take all those data and make some sense out of it. What are my possible decisions that I could make? And if I make those decisions, then what would give me the best outcome? So AI, that's kind of a second part of it. And then the third part of it is the ability to launch and coordinate massive actions. So in the companies that you mentioned that I've been with, they're global companies. They have complex supply chains, and there's a lot to coordinate. There's a lot of different people. There's a lot of part numbers. There's a lot of SKUs. There's a lot of customers and destinations. And so coordinating all that. So when I think about AI, I think about the operations ability to kind of assimilate those three things: massive amount of data, being able to make recommendations on the fly and probabilistically with a lot of analysis. And then third, the ability to launch data instantaneously. And not in a cycle time of a week, but like a cycle time of seconds or minutes. So that's what I think about when I think about AI and operations.
Yeah, that's a great way to frame it. And I want to get into the practical applications of that. Before I do that, though, anytime any of us are talking about AI in realm of our job spheres, so whether we're a warehouse manager or in the manufacturing plant or an analyst or somewhere, I think it's human nature to think, okay, is my job gone, right? And so let's dig in before we get into the practicality of what you just mentioned in terms of framing it up. How is this whole human AI, and none of us are going to know, nobody has a crystal ball, I get that, but the whole human AI interface, because AI isn't going to replace us generally in most cases, but how does that work? What's your perspective on how can we still bring our human magic to the mix?
Yeah. I think kind of a clinical answer would be, well, look, if you got a job that's highly repetitive and can be repeated at each notion, and it's kind of crude cut, I think that's a prime area for AI. And you'd have to think about adapting kind of your own skills and kind of moving along that. But that's a small piece of the work, and that's always capable. Like people before AI, as an operations leader, we would be looking at those types of roles and seeing how can we streamline those? How can we take that work and kind of have it move faster? I think there'll always be a level of strategic work that will always require human intervention, always require that finesse touch of kind of knowing what's going on. In my world in procurement, just to pick a topic, the strategic relationship management with my suppliers, right? You're not going to have chat GPT with natural language processing calling up your CEO and to beg for parts or to negotiate a deal, right? You're going to want your experts available to go do that. And so, once one lets go of that fear of this is going to kind of take my job and starts embracing kind of the world to come, then I think they kind of see that continuum and see, where you want to move to. And I've seen that in a number of different areas. I think one of the ones that would probably be a good example we could build upon is in supply chain risk management. So back when I kind of got started in that area, 2011, 2012, everybody was afraid of it and afraid of what it would do and whose job it would take away. And now I can't imagine a company coming to work and not using some analytical tool to assess their risk.
That's right.
So as an example.
That's a great example. I mean, I think, there's lots of jobs that, and maybe in some operations still, somebody's sitting there sorting out order paper, right? But in most cases that's been replaced by a system. And this is just one more of those things. And it's never, it's never one to one. We all get that. It's always, every technology revolution, if you will, or evolution for that matter, has its nuances. But you're right. I mean, that's a great point. So now what was once a feared entity or whatever is now just, it's table stakes. You gotta have that to run an operation in today's world.
You do, and you've got to kind of be open to it. And we could talk more about that, but I think organizations that are afraid of the future and kind of where technology is going to lead are going to be left behind, because there's plenty of others, including most probably your competition, that's saying, well, we're not afraid of trying. And embarking down that path.
When our team's talking, I use the analogy, and this may or may not be applicable, fully applicable. I think it's absolutely applicable. Is the internet. When the internet came out, it was scary, and the companies that got on the internet and were able to do business on the internet were the ones who survived. Whereas when you're saying, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to sell just locally. Well, many of them got crushed by outside competition because they could operate, right? And so, but that said, so let's transition into practical, because just like when the internet came out, people were like, okay, I have the internet now, I have a website, but what does that really mean? What am I doing, right? We figured that out since then. But I think AI, and certainly, again, the popularist portion of AI that's popped out here, it has a lot of manufacturing and supply chain leaders out there saying, whoa, I get it. I get what Joe just said about this large amounts of data and being able to make decisions off of that. And how do I do that? So what do you see from an application standpoint and kind of really two areas? There's the planning level, which are things, but also the execution level. Where can we apply this stuff for real?
Yeah, I think let me start with execution and move up to planning, and then I'll move the other way around. So when you think about execution, that's really the results that you're kind of looking for. So that's really the important part. So the planning is almost planning for the execution, right? So how do you plan to make sure that your execution runs flawlessly? So when I think about that, I think about areas like your strategic sourcing and thinking about your supply base. And this is kind of a new topic that I'm just starting to talk with a little bit of my network about, that folks who are embracing the new or starting to think about, is this idea of a dynamic supply chain. So I'll tell a quick historical story and then bring us today, and I got to make my point. Back 20 something years ago, companies were looking for cost savings, and they said, "Hey, we just discovered things are cheaper in China, and everybody who's going to be new is on a plane over to Shanghai, right, and setting up things over in China." And everybody moved over there, and that was kind of the thing to do, And then time rolls on, and businesses move, and events happen, and now we find ourselves in a sense of, oh wow, loading everything up in one place doesn't make sense anymore. Look what just happened. Look how I'm stuck, and I got to change. And then, oh, by the way, I got technology that has changed the way I manufacture goods. So I don't need labor costs as much as I did 20 years ago. So I got to think about that. And then, oh, by the way, my decision-making processes of how I do planning are more sophisticated than they were before. So I have to think about kind of how I'm going to integrate all those things. So when you kind of take technology and say, well, I better plan a supply chain that's going to work for me for the balance of 2024 and 2025. well, let's start in where do I think my orders are going to come from, and what are my supply options, and where might my flows be? I don't actually have them yet, so I got to forecast. I got to do analytics. I got to take the past and project into the future. So I think kind of the first step is the analytical tools to say, okay, let me set myself up for success. I had all my suppliers over on the outer rim of Asia before. Well, okay, now I've decided I got to have something in Mexico and China, and maybe even Southeast Asia somewhere else, and maybe even in Europe, and maybe even some reshoring back in the United States, if you can imagine. Well, now you just don't pull up those trees by the roots, right? It's a dynamic thing. You've got to think through your supply base and kind of getting that all set up. So a ton of work at the planning level that we could just talk about what it means to kind of resource that. But then you move to the execution level and you think, well, you're setting yourself up so that when you get in an order and you say, I got this order from a customer, the customer is located in geography X. They ordered this particular product for me that has this particular bill of material, that has a long bill of material supply base that's all around this particular area. Which one do I pull? How do I send out those orders, and how do I build for that particular order that's at low cost? So now the situation got more complex, but presumably we have the AI tools or the advanced tools to kind of help us kind of make that decision. So I see that. I see on the planning level, really kind of looking at that picture, and then on the execution level, the ability to kind of take the thing that you set up for and ability to kind of move it into action when you need to.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and it's a great story leading up to that. I know why you went there. It makes total sense. I think if you're an organizational leader right now listening to this, you're going, yep, makes sense. These are challenges you're being faced with, no question. So now, all right, so we get there, we kind of see about, all right, I see where, and any spot along that way, right? I could start somewhere, but just like we have many of our customers who come to us and they're excited about a new technology or something. I'll use robotics for instance. Tell another story. That can be exciting, but that takes specialized personnel and capital and other things and maintenance that goes with it. And all of a sudden, a customer's eyes, where they start at excitement, now they're like, whoa. So how can somebody, if they see these needs, they see the benefit where AI can match up somewhere in their operation, whether on the planning or the execution side we just talked about, how do they engage? Is it with folks like yourself, consultancies? How are you seeing it really work out well, where a company's coming in and they're able to implement AI and it's successful for them?
Yeah, a great question, and I've seen this answer in action again in past technology integrations, and I mentioned this kind of supply chain risk management as one of them, where you've got a lot of early adopters that said, "Hey, I get it, and I'm willing to take a start." Now, in those companies, I had leadership in the company that said, "I'm going to give you a pass on some boo-boos, right? You're going to make some mistakes. You're gonna go to some conferences, you're gonna learn some things, and you're gonna forget some things, and all that's you got to be able to kind of give a shot at." And so I think the first part is a management commitment to investigate the new ideas and investigate the future and kind of put together a plan, and then start develop a strategy. And I think to your question and point, and not to be self-serving, is I think folks are going to need some outside resources because you're either going to have to pick folks who have seen it and done it and know, or you can assign. I used to assign as an operations leader my high potential person, and I said, guess what? You're going to be my XYZ expert. Go get really smart and report back to the leadership team what you think we should do next. And that'll work as a personnel development thing, and also as a way to kind of bring the company along. But it's going to be hard to find experts that you're going to hire straight off, and you're going to need to rely on folks who have seen it and done it before. The other part, and you kind of mentioned this at the beginning, is and I've seen folks say this: my boss has told me we need an AI strategy, so I'm calling to you to get an AI strategy. Like, well, what do you mean? Like, how do you sign up for OpenAI, or are you looking to build on your SNOP system? I mean, you got to kind of figure out what your continuum is, have a strategy, have a starting point, have a direction you want to go in.
Yep, that makes total sense. And so, with folks you've worked with or what you've seen in the industry, where are the tripwires? Where are the potholes? Where are the landmines? What are people fail when they look to implement AI? Where are they falling down? Where are their
Yeah,
failure
yeah,
points?
yeah. It's just kind of coming off your last question. I think that the first pothole that you have to avoid is fear, right? So I think that's the first thing, and the nature of supply chain organizations kind of abhor this kind of change. And so you first of all really have to get the ground fertile for accepting kind of a new level of change. So I think the first tripwire is kind of a culture around um, risk and newness and technology. So I think that's kind of the first area, and then after that, I would say it's really starting to kind of climb the ladder and get started somewhere. The thing I say about supply chain folks, it's a little bit the culture and the nature. We're kind of like Marines. We're really not happy unless we got mud on our face and people are yelling at us. So to go to the boss and say, "Hey, boss, I really think I need a fancy dancy tool that's gonna, let me go home at 5 o'clock, and yeah, I think it's gonna run a little smoother, and everybody's gonna be happier. It's new G whiz technology." It's not a muscle memory that we have. So I think folks just kind of have to get over that and kind of get started.
Yeah, it's a great point. And we already kind of talked about this earlier, where, okay, if you do nothing, it's a challenge. And I guess when you're in supply chain, not only is it your competitor is going to be doing things, but folks up and down the supply chain with you are going to be leveraging AI, which is going to put even more of a crunch. Like we need more at any point you're at in the supply chain, like you really need more crunch. But here it comes, and I think that's, if you could play that crystal ball out, I mean, it's going to be really hard for supply chain leaders in this space if they don't adopt this sooner rather than later, right?
Great point. Great point. Because you're going to have other parts of the organization that are going to bring that along. I mean, let's just pick one area. I recently wrote an article about forecasting with high SKU count companies, and those that kind of work in the area know how difficult that is. Trying to forecast component level, product level, subcomponent level, et cetera, how difficult that is. But and how much salespeople hate to forecast. So AI tools are going to be used to do that, and then they're going to turn to the supply chain folks and say, "Well, I got all this great data. How are you integrating this at AI speed to turn it into order delivery and reducing my lead time and all the things I thought we were doing this for?" And if you're saying, "Well, I'm scared," that's not going to be a good place to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. So looking at like a best practice or just a follow through. So somebody's listening at this and they're like, okay, all right, Joe, Alex, I'm over the fear hump. I'm ready. I see this. I want it. However, and I don't have an executive coming to me saying we need to do this. I've got to go have a conversation with somebody either at the VP level, or maybe I'm at the VP level, I need to go to the C level, whatever it is. How have you seen, from a kind of a start to finish? And we talked a little bit about some successes, but what is that best practice path? Where should folks look to maybe start? How big? What success criteria should they be looking at? Kind of walk us through what really looks like a successful, at least pilot project for bringing AI into your business.
Yeah, so I mean, my mind races with a number of things that you could do. I mean, one of them is have a clear idea of what you're trying to fix, right? Where you think you want to kind of fix the problem. And a lot of times it's on time delivery because that's kind of the key metric, right? It might be revenue enhancement because you're able to fulfill revenue faster. So I think first of all, kind of establishing a goal of what it is you want to fix and how you're going to go about it. And then I think the best advice would be to kind of start small. And one idea that I think would be good for folks to start is inside your current set of technology stack. You probably have suppliers that are adding AI layers on to what they're doing. And there's no reason you can't call your suppliers up and say, "Hey, teach me, what you're doing, how you would just advance the stack that I'm already doing." Let's say it's just basic integrated business planning, S&OP. and you're just using it for that. Wouldn't it be great to have those suppliers come in and say, I bought a package that does the basic core stuff. Teach me what you're doing kind of at an AI level and how it would all fit in. So, in that way, you're able to take something, which is your current supplier, and you're able to kind of build that on. I'll say that because we're kind of talking about the migration of it. Where I think AI is really going to be helpful is on top of that stack. At some point, you always, so far, have met a human endpoint. So you may do some sales and operation planning, but at some point, it's no longer the SNOP person, and it turns over to the buyer to go buy it. And then it turns out to a logistics person to get incoming material to come in. And then it turns out it's got to roll to an MRP person to plan the factory and all of that. So at some point now, those are real meetings with real people. But if you think about the work, a lot of it's pretty straightforward. I get this and I turn it into an MRP. And I can do that as a human, but if I can do it as a human, getting back to your very first question, and it's repeatable, and you can kind of think about it, if this, then that, or if these, then probably those, and most likely this one. This is where AI is going to have a strength. It's going to build upon all those layers. So kind of going back to your question, there's the core basics of get started with what you're already at, make it relevant to what you're doing, develop some metrics and goals around what it is you're specifically trying to do, and then start small and get started.
Yeah, I love that advice. We've all either bought a technology or a product or whatever else and been excited about it, and they're like, now what? So starting with the problem is always great. So here's something. And I love the advice, about being close to something you're really familiar with, right? So maybe don't go out on something completely unknown. Stick with a partner. I love all that. I think that's really good advice, because this is a somewhat unknown technology to many of us, and the benefits, sometimes can be lost if we're also kind of confused about where we're trying to apply it. So that's great advice. I also wonder, so we're talking about the supply chain professional, and you do a lot of consulting in that world and help folks kind of understand certainly the supply chain risk management and other things. But what about on the providers? Because there are so many providers coming in and providing really good value. I think about what we do with our customers. Now we've been working with neural networks and machine learning and now AI, but for folks like us, where we come in, we help customers move stuff, execution on the floor, right? Make it make it faster, more accurate, safer, all those things. But it isn't necessarily an AI natural. We didn't start there. And I think there's a lot of providers out there that want to continue to bring value to their customers. How do they engage in AI? Like where is it going to be AI from within and AI from without? And how does all that play out?
Yeah. I think it's almost like you answer the last one and this one, and they got to kind of meet somewhere, right?
Yeah, right,
so that it all kind of works together. I think from the provider's perspective, one of the key areas that at least I see is think about the things you're learning about in terms of your processes that you're bringing to your customers, right? So, if I understand what Mountain Leverage does, you use kind of natural language processing, and you instruct kind of how things happen in a warehouse. Well, you're learning a lot about processes that you gather. You're developing some awesome IP that you'd love to turn over to the AI machine to machine learn and go, well, I can do it once, I can do it 1,000 times, and I can build upon that human layer. And I can maybe help that person who may be speaking in the mic and say, move this part from this shelf to another, and say, well, are you sure you want to move it there? Because this just happened. No way you could know about it, but this is something could happen. So I think the providers kind of understanding where they fit in the ecosphere will be important. I got another suggestion for you, Alex, that I think also is going to be another cool area that a lot of folks may not have thought about. The cloud-based service data services companies. So there's a couple of them that take your data and move it up to the cloud. A lot of those are adding data services on, and they could be kind of the bridge point because AI companies are working with them. So you're an input to this data services company. They have AI that sits on top of it, and they know how to integrate all those two together. So, I mean, I think that's a huge opportunity for companies to be, hey, be the first there. Go talk to a Snowflake or somebody like that, and see and be part of their ecosphere, so that you can be the pull that their clients are using to kind of solve that same problem. So I think that's another huge opportunity for providers.
Yeah, that's great direction, great advice. And I know you touched on this a little bit more, kind of future looking, but playing this out. I mean, and it does seem like the cycles are fast. I mean, they're, almost kind of anxiety fast in terms of how quickly some leaps are being made on the generative AI track, right? But just looking at this, where can we see, I don't know, a few years out, and I know that's hard to predict for anybody, but where do we really see this going from a future trend? What do you see as maybe the next big thing that folks can kind of be looking for or maybe be anticipating?
Yeah, I think for me, the pot of gold, and it stitches kind of the things we've been talking about all together, is this idea that you develop a build plan in a typical S&OP cycle, and all the things that imply, right? Incoming material, manufacturing, finished goods, logistics to the customer, et cetera. And then you had this great plan, and then 5 minutes later, it's expired because something happened, and all that's got to be changed. And in the past, it was okay. I guess we got to call another meeting with all our humans for all our different pieces and redo the plan, or be wrong by a little bit and apologize to our customer and be part of it. Where I think this is going to make the big impact is those interruptions, those changes are going to be integrated immediately. So you develop a build plan and you feed it into the machine, and the machine keeps the build plan going. It says, oh, hey, you couldn't possibly know this, but while you were meeting, this supplier decommitted, or this logistics channel clogged up, or this other thing happened. So we just rerouted. It was no big deal. You've programmed into me what to do. So I can go do that. And if you back that up even to the idea of planning your supply chain to begin with, to be able to be dynamic, that dynamic supply chain idea, where it's variable, customer orders change and groupings change, and all that's happening on the fly. No way a group of people can integrate that into any set of tools. It would take AI to do that, assimilating a huge amount of data, thinking about all our potential options that we could pick, and then launching and coordinating action. Right? You can't do that with people. You'll need AI to kind of fulfill that dream.
Yeah, and to come up with a quantitative, probable decision and make it quickly. It's it is kind of crazy. It's every leader's dream, though, to hear about the problem after it's been solved within seconds. That is attractive. And I would say, not that no one will ever know, and God forbid anything like this ever happens again. But we do know disruptions. I mean, your supply chain risk management, there are disruptions that occur. But I wonder what the supply chain would have been like. Post, and not even now, but like in the near future, when AI is really cranking to the way the vision you just described, and a COVID type event hits, or the Suez Canal, the things that we've got going on in the canals, different things that disrupt supply chains, all the decisions that would have been made in an instant before maybe even humans recognize what's actually happening. That's an interesting thing to think about for sure.
Well, and even that core technology is really already there. I mean, from the supply chain risk management side. So in like I said, 2011, 2012, we were multi-tier mapping out our supply base, right? Not down to the supplier, down to the supplier's point of manufacture, right? And then collecting and trolling and collecting data on where there was an event, and then turning that over to act on that event. So we were doing that 10 years ago. So now we've built upon that. And so those companies are now very far advanced, have a lot of capability, have a lot of potential to fulfill this dream.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's just if you aren't in the game yet, there are others that are ahead of you, but it's not like it's too late either. I think there are opportunities, and it's a great point you bring up about some of these providers and these cloud folks. These things will, I guess, democratize is maybe the wrong word, but it's going to be more accessible. The providers are going to begin to pick this up and use it, and it's more about, to your point, getting over the fear, finding a way that you think, problem you think you can solve, and then just jumping in, grabbing somebody you trust and going after it, right?
Absolutely. You remind me of another great point, because another thing to go over is I heard this so many times. Our data isn't clean enough to get started. Oh, please. I have not worked for a company, and I may be older than most of the listeners. I work for a company yet that has clean data ready to go.
So true.
Most of these providers are used to that, and that's another thing you asked on the provider side is don't make cleaning up data an obstacle. Plenty of analytics companies out there that are good at cleaning up data. Most folks have said we'll integrate that as part of our overall answer. Another thing not to get hung up on.
Yeah, that's great. Joe Carson, CEO of Spin Strategies. Joe, this has been great. I appreciate all you brought to us in this exciting topic, ever-changing topic. And I'm anxious to see where we're going. And maybe sometime we'll bring you back on and you give us an update here as things really progress.
Come back anytime, Alex. Just let me know.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.